Hello. Welcome back to the room where, it always annoys me because half my face is like in the light and half of it's not in the light. It actually really does annoy me. I don't know if any of you's actually ever thought that, but it really annoys me. But hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about something. I'm really excited for this. It's a bit of like an argument, a bit of a case, a bit of a debate, which I know there will be people on either side. I know that there will be people agreeing that the Clarks are better and people that are going to agree that the Grimes are better, but we're going to talk about which of them is the best family. So to do this, I'm only going to focus on the original trilogy of characters that we met at the beginning. So that would be Rick, Laurie, and Carl, and Madison, Alicia, and Nick. Of course, with the Grimes, you could include Rick Jr., you could include Michonne, you could include Judith. With the Clarks, you could use Travis, you could use, we don't know this yet, but it seems as though there's speculation that Alicia has maybe had a kid in season 8 of Fear. I really don't know. I hope that's not true, or at least I guess I don't care if it's true as long as Alicia's alive, but we don't even know about that yet. But it's just something that maybe we could talk about, but we're not. We're just going to talk about the three people that we started with, basically. So I just start with the Grimes, move on to the Clarks, and then conclude with my personal opinion and what I might think is more of like a overall opinion, how everyone else would also see it. I also want to say that I'm gonna try and keep this argument very fair. Um, each family had characters. Only three, but still on the show for different periods of time. And I don't just want to say that Rick's the best, or Rick's the best Grime, and therefore the Grimes are the best because Rick was on the show for 8 and a bit seasons straight, or Alicia's the best and the Clarks are the best because Alicia was on the show for 7 seasons straight. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about, even in a very short amount of time, as we'll see with Laurie, who was on the show for 2 and a bit seasons, and season 1 being only 6 episodes. We're going to talk about what they did when they were there, and if they showed anything to be like the best, and what that actually is. So I'm going to start with Laurie, probably the weakest link of the Grimes. And in my opinion, Laurie is the worst out of all of these 6 characters. And I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. Laurie's a character that a lot of people don't like. And I don't dislike Laurie for say. I don't think she did much. She ain't my favourite. I'm not going to sit here and say I love her or I hate her. But she's just there. I guess I find it unironically funny because she's just so sometimes a bit ridiculous and delusional and just like annoying that it's just kind of funny. But I can't really say much for Laurie. Later on, she does give birth to Judith, but she's not part of the argument. I guess it was the first time we ever saw a baby being born in the Walking Dead universe, and the Walking Dead, so that is something to take note of. That is quite cool. But besides just being the husband of Rick and the mother of Carl, Laurie didn't really leave that much of an impact. Laurie definitely played a part in Rick's development, and, it all ties about Rick's character and how we like Rick, and he's a Grime. So I will say that Laurie definitely pushed the narrative a bit, and it's not like her death, wink wink, was totally pointless. We'll get onto that. But Laurie, I'd give her like a 5 out of 10. She did a little bit, she didn't do that much, so really not feeling it for me. Carl. So I said before about the death. I think Carl's death was ridiculous. I think Laurie's death, as I said, pushed the narrative. Rick really went through a lot with that. That was his first major death, and that is one of the things that really got him to understand the world and kind of what he had to do and the way that he was going to have to feel. But Carl's death wasn't needed. Now, Carl's death was nice. Like, his death had 2 implications. The first one was the individual situation where he saved that guy. I forgot who it was, but he ended up dying anyway. So it was literally, that was kind of pointless, but it was nice. And for that one situation, Carl's death meant something. The second was kind of the war between, I guess, Sanctuary and everywhere else, or Rick and Negan, whoever you want to say the players were in the war. Carl's death was like one of the reasons that ended. But again, that didn't need to happen. Like, Carl's death was, on face value, it was fine, but it wasn't. It just wasn't. And you might say, like, why am I making such a big deal about Carl's death? I haven't even talked about Carl. Well, I think that it just ruins him right at the end. Because Carl, as I'm going to mention, I'll say it right now, I think Carl slowly kept on developing. Carl's development was great, and I think that the one of the major reasons was because he was so young. So not only was he developing in the world, but he was developing as an adult in this new world, and seeing his change in attitude and responsibilities and his desire to do things for himself and his community was great to see. I love that. You know, we remember seeing Carl in the prison and how he was very young then, and how he was kind of being told that he would just get the little jobs, and as he got older, he started doing things by himself, like when he was meeting Enid and everybody like that. There was two. Literally, my Walking Dead knowledge is really rusty. There was Enid and that other girl, but I forgot her. But that's just a side note. She died in season 9. You know, with the Pike scene. Yeah. Well, not Enid. Well, I don't remember. There was two. Lydia and Enid, but I forgot which one came first. I think Enid came first. Enid definitely came first. Anyway, that's just a side thing. But Carl is absolutely a great character, and the reason that I put heavy emphasis on his death is because it just fell so flat. He never did anything, and I would maybe sit here and say Carl is amazing because after Rick left, Carl could have taken his place. Carl could have been the leader, but that never happened, and that's what really annoys me because Carl didn't really do anything major. Like, he didn't. There's nothing that Carl did that I would think like, oh, I absolutely remember that. Like, for example, Carol, one thing I think of right now is when she saved everyone from Sanctuary with all the guns and everything. You know, with Rick, you think of the countless times that he saved people. But with Carl, he didn't really do too much that impacted the story for say. Like, maybe I'm forgetting things. I always have, you know, I'm just talking out of my head. I ain't planning this, and that's why I'll stutter, because sometimes I think of different things in the spot. Like, that's why things just sometimes seem a little bit disillusioned. I get that. But like thinking about it, talking about it, Carl, I just can't say that he was amazing, but he was very good. Do you know what I mean? And I love him so much, and I would give Carl a 7 out of 10. And I think that honestly, seeing him in the other seasons and being Rick's son, and what it also again meant for Rick when Carl died, and like Carl had cool moments, don't get me wrong, like when he got shot in the eye, the bravery that Carl had in that moment was so good. And that's the Grimes, that is the family of the Grimes, and this is why I'm talking about them, because if I want to say who's better, Clarks or Grimes, and I'm saying the Grimes, for example, it's about the family ties, about how Carl does things that his dad would do because he learnt from his dad, and how Laurie would affect his dad, and how, do you see all these ties and what the relevance is of talking about them all, and how Laurie was good in, was her only good thing was really just like her death and what it meant for the story, but Laurie didn't do anything else, whereas Rick is the one kind of pulling the weight of the family, and Carl was just that wasted potential, even more than Nick. I would say that Carl is the character in this whole universe that had his potential stripped from him, and it hurts, because no one likes season 8 of The Walking Dead. People would defend it. I mean, it's not as, I guess it's not terrible, nowhere near as bad as Fear, but Carl and just everything like that is just why people don't like season 8, and I think it shows. With Rick, I could just go on forever about everything that Rick does. Did I say I give Carl a 7 out of 10? I think I did. So I give Carl a 7 out of 10, simply because he didn't fully realize his potential. But with Rick, I'll tell you right now, he gets a 10 out of 10. Rick, like, it just means so much, and there is so many things I could say about him and what he did. I mean, he's the heart and soul of the universe. Rick is the guy that's development was just, it was perfect. Rick was perfect. He already was like a leader. Like, we knew that because he was a sheriff. But he kind of grew into the world. And while Carl grew up and grew into the world, Rick grew into the world. And every experience that he went through just really made him become who he later was. You had Shane, who already knew. And honestly, if you had Shane in season 11, he probably would have had no development, because Shane knew what he was talking about this whole time. But Rick went through Shane, he went through Laurie, he went through Carl, he went through all these situations that made him who he is. And Rick is cool. He's badass. He's probably more badass than Madison in some way. It's debatable, but in like when he bit off people's ears, and I think we bit off that motorcycle club guy's ear, and then when his big war with Negan and the decision that he made to actually save Negan, they're big things. Rick's got a lot of power. He's probably one of the most powerful people. And if he was back in Alexandria and was probably leader still, he might be leading the Commonwealth and he could have such a huge army because Rick built it all. Rick is the reason why they are alive. And that is what the Grimes have done. And that's why Rick's a 10 out of 10. Rick is single-handedly the best character, kind of, one of the best characters in this whole universe, and the best character of The Walking Dead by far, because Rick is just so lovable. Everyone likes him. Even if Rick isn't always perfect, and even if he can be annoying, because every single character can be annoying and do annoying things, Rick is the one that would just defy all odds. And then his sacrifice at the end of his time on The Walking Dead, his sacrifice in season 9 to save everybody by thinking that he was going to kill himself and commit suicide for everyone. That's what the Grimes are. And that's what the blood is. And that's shown in Carl, in his sacrifice as well. And even in Laurie's sacrifice, to be so willing to have the baby for Judith. And it's just, like, it just makes sense. It makes sense that this is who the Grimes are. So, overall, the Grimes, I would give the Grimes, out of like 30, I would give them 10, 7, 17, 23. So the Grimes' total score out of 30, in my opinion, is 23 out of 30. Simply because Laurie wasn't really, Laurie didn't have much to do for herself and much to say for herself necessarily. And Carl, he probably would have been a 10 out of 10 if we would have been able to see him lead and almost create a cycle. But it just fell flat, as I keep saying, but I will keep mentioning it because I don't talk about it enough on this channel. I don't talk about it enough in terms of what I talk about The Walking Dead. It is ridiculous, Carl's death, and I can't give him 10 out of 10 when that's how his storyline ended. I do want to say, I think that it was actually 22. 22 out of 30 is my total score out of just, for each character, 1 to 10, out of how impactful and how great the Grimes are. But now for the Clarks, we're going to start with Madison. So what I want to say about the Clarks, and of course this is about Fear too, I think the characters, or at least in Fear, but the Clarks, I think the Clarks are more sophisticated. At least Madison and Nick, in my opinion, are quite sophisticated. Alicia is a bit more simpler in, who she is and what she does. And being simple is not a bad thing. It really isn't. I think that every single Grimes character, in some extent, is quite simple and not that complex. But I think Madison and Nick are complex. And, like I say, Rick got 10 out of 10. And while he's not the most complex character. Let's just be honest. Rick's not the most complex character. But I'm still giving him a 10 out of 10. And saying he's one of the best characters out of the whole universe. So it's not a bad thing. I really want to re-emphasize that. But Madison has everything. Madison is the perfect protagonist going to turn antagonist. Madison is complex because everything about her feels a little bit off and a little bit insecure. In season 3, when Madison was trying to get her way in the military base, what she did to Troy and the means and efforts that she went through to try and figure out what was going on. I mean, it was just crazy. Madison had it in her head that she was gonna figure it out, and she just went all out on Troy and went to figure it out. When Madison sees that Troy's misbehaving, she kind of thinks, oh, I'm gonna use Troy. Troy's a bit unstable, so I'm gonna have him close to me. I'm gonna make him think that we're best friends. I'm gonna get him to be friends with my son, because then we can figure it out. We can get really close with it, and we can make the decisions here and make sure that this place can be safe for myself and my kids. Madison's exit was probably one of the best because everything that Madison lives up for, her kids, she sacrificed herself for her kids. Now, I don't believe that the situation and everything getting to that point was good. I think that Madison would have made better decisions if she was thinking right, but I will give her exit loads of major credit because she sacrificed herself for her kids, and that is basically the end of it all. And that's what Madison had a tunnel vision for, making sure that her kids and herself and her friends were safe. You know, she didn't really care about the people she hurt along the way, as long as she could be the one in charge, as long as she could be the one keeping them safe. Her return in season 8, Madison is not the same. That's quite obvious. And I am being critical. I was critical on Laurie, and I was critical on Kyle's exit. I don't think Madison returning in season 8 was bad. I don't think that she's actually bad in season 8. She's not the same, but there are similarities, and she still does feel like Madison. My overall score for Madison, I would give an 8.5. I would love to give her a 10, but I think that I had to minus loads of points because Kyle just fell flat at the end. And I think that Madison a little bit in season 4 wasn't great. And I think that she's not the same person exactly in season 8. But I do believe she's okay in season 8. I believe her exit in season 4 was also quite good. So Madison, to me, gets an 8.5. So character number 2 is Alicia. Now, Alicia is a good character. She's, like I say, the more simple character, and it shows her development started in season 1, where she was a bit of an idiot, making decisions, like when she went to see her boyfriend, even though her mum explicitly told her not to, and there was this virus going around, and at the time, because this is Fia season 1, they didn't know what it was, and they didn't know how it was spread, and how it was contagious, and that's the thing, that was very stupid of Alicia. In season 2, at the beginning, she starts contacting people over the radio, which becomes an enemy for one of the episodes, like episode 4. They were like pirates in the apocalypse. And that was all because Alicia was just trying to contact and talk to some guy, and Alicia explained where they were. That was really stupid as well. But she changes at the end of season 2, where she actually kills some people, or one person. She kills, I don't know how many people, to save Travis. And eventually, she's able to save Travis, and Madison and Alicia and Travis, they all have to leave. And then in season 3, she gets really close with, forgot his name, but Sam Underwood's the actor that plays him. I think Jake. She gets really close with Jake, and she starts getting brave and doing missions with him, going out with him, even though Jake said not to. There's Alicia's a little bit stupidities coming back, but Alicia still goes with him and is kind of proving up that she wants to do something. And Alicia in season 3 wants to like do better, and that's great to see where she's come from and how she develops. And over time in Fia, even 5 and 6. She has some ridiculous moments, but I think that season 6 is quite nice for Alicia, and I would say that season 4 and 5 is a little bit harmless. It's not like other characters suffered more, and the story and the overall Fia suffered more. Alicia had some ridiculous moments, like where she wouldn't kill walkers, like, and then that was really stupid. No one liked that. And then she took Charlie to the beach, which wasn't like a bad thing, and it was nice of Alicia to do that, but no one wanted Alicia to take Charlie to the bloody beach. And then we get to season 7, and Alicia got bit, and she's a leader. That was a bit weird as well. And then Alicia wants to talk to Strand, but she didn't want to talk to Strand, and then there's the whole arguments, and everything's a little bit all over the place. But Alicia gets out of it, and then dies, but then doesn't die. Alicia's end was a bit weird, but kind of exciting. I'm not gonna lie, like, compared to Madison, like, Madison's ending was, like, very cool because it was what she kind of stood for. Alicia's ending was a bit weird, but interesting because, like, we still don't know to this day whether Alicia's alive, and we probably will find out literally all my days within, like, a week or 2. I did not realise Fia Season 8B was coming out that soon. We're literally going to find out within, like, a week, about a month, whenever the episodes come out, of what actually happened to Alicia. And I think it was a really engaging thing, I guess, her ending. Alicia, I'm gonna give her an 8.5 again. I think that she's very respectable, she's very good, and Alicia is another character that I would give a 10 out of 10. But I think that some of the dodgier moments at the end of Fia just kind of ruined it for me to say, well, she's not perfect. Like, she is 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10, because she's just not perfect. Rick is perfect, like, I will say that, but none of the other characters really are. Like, and I want to say, like, in my video, I did a video where I talked about my top 5 favourite characters, and Alicia was on there, and I gave her a 10. I said, everyone in this list is a 10 out of 10. That's true. Like, I would give her a 10 out of 10, but if I have to be critical about what she was like when she left the show, what she was like during the show, what impact did she have, Alicia is 8.5. That's how it is. But as a character, as that I see, I'd give her a 10. But that's just why I might seem like I'm giving different numbers. It's not true. Like, I would give her a 10, but just being critical for the sake of it to see who's better, I'm giving her 8.5. So Nick is amazing. Nick's character is perfect, and he only has one problem that I will mention. But Nick is another complex one. He's complex like Madison. Nick deals with like drugs and addiction, which is, I don't really remember explicitly seeing this in The Walking Dead. And Nick's addiction, is like the whole thing of him in season 1. And it's rough to see. And he does some really crappy things. Like, we can't say that Nick was the most well-behaved saint in any of the time he was on the show. But Nick kind of had this, like, understanding of the world. He was a little bit sick. Like, he's normal, but he had this little bit of, like, with his addiction, he was a little bit sick to this new world, and he kind of just, it was who he is. Like, Nick is the kind of guy to live in this world, and he absolutely used it, and that's why we love him so much, because he flourishes in this new world, and we love to see it. Nick was very big at pushing Madison's story. Madison and Nick, with their little kind of bond, which is ironic how they're the two complex characters, and I feel like that's even supposed to be something that Erikson did on purpose, but Madison and Nick have a very strong bond, and at least Nick pushes Madison's story, especially in season 2. At the ending of season 2, the last season 2B, Nick is the reason why Madison will make stupid decisions. Madison will be stupid, but she does it so she can find her family. Like when she set the light off at the lighthouse, and then Alicia's there telling her that she's an idiot, which is the whole family dynamic, because on some hand, you want Madison to find Nick, because we like Nick, we like Madison, but Madison made a stupid decision, and Alicia's there also thinking the other side of us, telling her that she's an idiot for doing that. And Nick is very detrimental to Madison's story, I would say very much so. When Nick dies and Madison finds out in season 7, she's very upset. When Nick dies in season 4, Alicia is very upset. Like, in season 2A as well, when Nick starts doing things like going off alone, Madison is not happy about it. And it's this whole thing of like this dynamic where Nick wants to go away and find his own way, and Madison wants Nick with her at all times. And that's the Clarks thing. The Grimes thing was about being brave, being a bit of a leader, doing things for other people and being selfless. The Clarks thing is about being a bit of like a demolition team, like to save themselves, like to have this family bond, because Madison would do anything for Nick, and Nick would do things for Madison, like when he was going to kill Jeremiah, so Madison wouldn't have to do so, but then Madison does end up killing Jeremiah, so then Nick doesn't have to. And then Alicia, well, she's kind of another side of the Clark. She's the more morally compassed side. She's the more of the side that just wants them to do things for everybody else, rather than be this tunnel vision, this demolition just to save themselves. And it's this kind of like interweaving thing where this one wants this one and this way, that all creates like the triangle of like, you have this one's morally guided, this one's a little bit of both, and this one's completely one way. And I always think of the Clarks as like a triangle, that each side is so different, but they're all part of the same boat. I think the Grimes has a more coherent kind of thing, like mainly the bond and the growth between Rick and Carl, but I still believe that the Clarks as a family has a lot to justify them. Nick's only flaw is the way that he exited the show. Oh my god. They could have done so much more with Nick. And if Frank Delane still wants to leave, they had better ways to get rid of Nick. Like, the thing that I always think is Nick was so abhorrent to not stay in one place. So why couldn't Nick have just gone? He just could have gone. And then if they wanted to bring him back, they could have. And if they didn't, we could always have it in our minds whether Nick is dead. And it really annoys me that they killed him, but killed him in the way that they killed him. It's so unforgivable. Like, and that's Nick and Carl's sad truth. they had much more to give. I think Nick kind of fulfilled more of a potential. I think Nick did things more in his prime, whereas Carl was kind of getting into more of a prime the older he was. And I think Carl's is still more wasted potential than Nick. But at least Carl's death meant something. But Nick's exit meant literally nothing. It ruined Charlie as a character. And I know this is about Nick, but oh my days, it's shocking. It's shocking that whoever it was, multiple people was probably involved in making that decision to get rid of Nick. And that just is the only reason that Nick, to me, wouldn't be a 10 out of 10. Like, his exit just ruins him to the point where I would give Nick 8.5. So that was really, really long. But I hope that I got my point across for characters, whether they were good or bad, and which ones had more better and worse things to say. My overall scores are the Grimes got 22 out of 30, and the Clarks got 25.5 out of 30. And that is my opinion that the Clarks are better than the Grimes. And I guess, in my opinion, that's true. And that sounds about right. Because with the Clarks, each family member seems to withhold their own. Like, they use the name of the Clarks and they just spread out and work with it. Like, each member is a Clark and is amazing to watch. And you can't say anything bad about the Clarks. With the Grimes, Rick holds it together so well. And Carl just follows behind him. But Laurie really lets them down, and I honestly believe that it would be drawed. If not, the Grimes could have won, if not for Laurie being just a bitch. Laurie really was just a bitch, and I think that that is the predominant reason on why I ain't gonna say the Grimes are better than the Clarks. And I know that some people would absolutely rip over this and say, well, the Clarks aren't actually that good, or, well, I don't count Laurie, or Laurie was only on the show for that long, and Madison was on the show for that long, and Rick was on the show for that long. You know, I understand it's not going to be exactly fair. I tried to make it as fair as possible, talking about each character's kind of ending, how they interlink with one another, specific events in a character's timeline. I tried to make it the best that it could be, and that the results of the Clarks being the best, that is my opinion. I believe that. And I honestly believe that the Clarks are probably better than the Grimes in everyone else's opinion. I said my opinion, and I would also talk about what other people might think. And I think if you really look into it, and you really take at least some parts of what I said in the video, I believe that the Grimes are not as good as the Clarks. And I think that I made my case why. I hope. I get the video wasn't perfect. None of my videos are necessarily perfect, and I'm not gonna try and ever say they are. But I've already discussed it for like 25 minutes or even longer than that. Like, the Clarks are just a little bit different. They don't have as much of a cohesive theme as the Grimes, as I said, but each Clark is a different colour. Whereas with the Grimes, Laurie's like a red and Carl and Rick are like a blue. Whereas if you had to have the Clarks, you'd have Madison's a red, Alicia's a green, Nick's a blue. Like, they all feel like something different. And the Grimes feel similar. And that's not a bad thing, because that helps them be more like a family, because, oh, you know, they learnt from each other and they're the same. And Rick and Cal, you know, both of them combined, spent loads of time on the show together, whereas the Clarks were so split up. And that's the thing. It's all subjective. Some people might use a different scheme or a different kind of reasoning on why the Grimes might be better or why the Clarks might be better. You know, some people might focus on, well, how impactful were they to the story alone? Nothing else, just impactful to the story. Or how likable were they? How much did you agree with them? I just took a little bit of everything to make my point that the Clarks are better. And I wouldn't say, you know, the Clarks are like a million miles better. I would say it is relatively close, but I do believe that the Clarks won. That is my opinion. But please tell me, what do you think? Because I really want to know if you agree. Or maybe you might say, like, both families are just as good. Maybe you don't like any of those families. But I think that both of them families, Grimes and Clarks, are fantastic, really entertaining, really special, really unique, and that's it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.